Every Monday morning started the same. I'd roll my trash can down the driveway, careful to set it just by the curb where the garbage truck could grab it. The can wasn't anything special, just the standard black plastic bin with always creaked when I opened it. Still, it was mine, and it had a job to do. But for some reason, that job had turned into a target. The first time it happened, I figured it was an accident. I came home from work, saw the can tipped over, cracked along the side, and thought maybe the garbage man had been rough with it. I picked it up, dragged it back to the garage, and duct taped the crack. By the next week, though, the tape had barely held when I found it smashed again. This time, there were muddy tire tracks leading from the street, across the curb, and into my yard. My grass was flat and dirt kicked up. That wasn't a garbage truck accident. It was deliberate. I set up my little security camera on the front porch. Nothing fancy, just one of those motion detecting wiped it to my phone. The next Monday I watched. Around noon I saw the culprit. A shiny Lexus with vanity plates glided down the road. The car didn't hesitate or even slow down. It swerved slightly, lined itself perfectly with my trash can. And then, bam, the bin toppled, the plastic denting under the weight of her bumper, before she straightened out and kept driving like nothing happened. My jaw clenched. The camera caught a clear shot of her face through the window. It was Karen. Of course, it was Karen. She lived 3 houses down. The self-proclaimed enforcer of HOA standards, always walking around with a clipboard at meetings, nitpicking every little thing. My grass was a half-inch too long one week. Violation notice. My shed door wasn't painted the exact shade of approved bag. Another notice. She thrived on rules. So why was she targeting my trash can? I gave her the benefit of the doubt once. Maybe she didn't notice. Maybe she was distracted. But then it happened again. And again. Every Monday, without fail, the camera caught her serving just enough to crush my bin. Sometimes she barely clipped it, denting the side. Other times she flattened it completely, leaving cracks like spider webs in the plastic. I lost count of how many times I replaced it. Finally, enough was enough. The following Monday, when she rolled down her window after stopping at the mailbox, I walked over. "Karen," I said, pointing to the broken trash can lying on its side. "You've run over my bin 3 weeks in a row, nearest." Her lips curled into embarrassed. To a smug little smile. "Well, maybe if you placed it properly, it wouldn't be in the way." "In the way?" I asked, incredulous. "It's exactly where it's supposed to be, at the curb, where the garbage truck can pick it up." She gave a dismissive wave, the kind people use when brushing crumbs off a table. "The HOA standards are clear," she said. "Trash bins shouldn't be visible for a time. Consider this a reminder. Besides," she added, lowering her sunglasses, "it's just a trash can." By another, all of her words stuck with me long after she drove away. She acted like she was doing me a favor, like destroying my property was somehow helpful. I sent the footage to the HO board, hoping for backup. Instead, they shrugged it off. "We can't prove intent," they wrote back. And technically, she's right. Trash cans should be kept out of sight. So I was stuck replacing cans over and over while Karen kept playing demolition derby with her Lexus. My neighbors started to notice, too. A few of them shook their heads when they saw me dragging another broken bin up the driveway. Some offered sympathetic comments, but no one dared confront her. She'd made herself untouchable with her endless rule citations and connections on the board. One evening, as I sat in my garage staring at the latest casualty, the cracked lid hanging off by a hinge, I felt a spark of anger ignite into something sharper. If she wanted to make this a game, then I'd change the rules. She thought I'd keep rolling over, buying new bins, letting her trample my patience week after week. But I wasn't about her keep winning. I started sketching an idea on a notepad. Nothing fancy, just a rough drawing of a trash can that wasn't really a trash can. What if, I thought, the next one didn't break? What if the next one broke her car instead? I imagined her smug face turning to shock when her Lexus bounced off something solid. I imagined her scrambling out on her high heels, looking around for someone to blame, realizing too late that she'd been outsmarted. That thought carried me through the week. Every time I passed the empty spot at the curb, every time I saw the scuffs in the grass from her tires, I felt the plan taking shape. I wasn't going to shout at her anymore. I wasn't going to complain to the useless Awa. I was going to make her regret underestimating me. By Sunday night, I'd made up my mind. This wasn't about a trash can anymore. It was about respect. It was about standing up to someone who thought the world revolved around her. And it was about proving that sometimes the quiet guy down the street had sharper teeth than anyone expected. The next morning, when I wheeled something new and very heavy out to the curb, I was smiling for the first time in weeks. The game was about to change. By the time Monday morning rolled around, I had my masterpiece sitting in the garage. What looked like an ordinary trash can was anything but. I had spent hours pouring concrete into a tall, cylindrical mold lined with plywood. I'd added a steel pipe down the center for reinforcement, then painted the whole thing black once it dried. To anyone passing by, it looked like just another bin. I even glued on a broken lid from one of the old ones Karen had flattened. From a distance, no one would ever know it wasn't hollow plastic. But when I tried to budge it, I could barely move it without a dolly. It wasn't a trash can anymore. It was a monument. That morning, I rolled the decoy into position at the curb. The garbage men would ignore it. It was too heavy to lift, but they'd pick up the actual trash from the smaller can I tucked discreetly behind a bush. The concrete can stood tall and proud, waiting for its attacker. I stepped back, wiped the sweat from my forehead, and admired it like an artist admiring their finished painting. All day I kept glancing out the window. Every squeal of brakes, every hum of an engine made me check the street. And then, right on schedule, I heard it, the smooth purr of Karen's Lexus crawling down the road. She always timed her mailbox check for midday, after the garbage men had passed. The camera caught her last week's smirk as she lined up her little joyride. Today, I could already see her shoulders shift behind the wheel as she veered toward the curb. I held my breath. The Lexus lined up with the bin, tires crunching on the edge of the pavement. She didn't slow down. There was no hesitation, no second thought. She aimed straight for it like a hunter spotting prey. And then, impact. The sound wasn't the hollow thunk of plastic shattering. It was a deep, violent crunch, followed by a screech of metal grinding against immovable stone. The front bumper folded in on itself, headlights spiderwebbing into shards. The hood buckled, steam hissing from somewhere inside as her engine gave a guttural cough. Her airbags exploded in a burst of white fabric, slamming against the windshield. For a split second, everything froze. Then came her scream. Karen shoved the airbag of the Lexus, clutching her designer purse like it was a lifeline. Her sunglasses dangled from one ear, her blonde bob sticking out at odd angles. She stared at the wrecked front end of her car, jaw slack. The trash can stood there, unmoved, not even chipped. I couldn't stop myself from stepping out onto the porch, coffee mug in hand. I leaned on the railing, calm as if I were just watching birds in the yard. Afternoon, Carrig, her head whipped toward me, red-faced and sputtering. What did you do? You sabotaged me. She shrieked, sabotaged. I asked, feigning confusion. That's just my trash can. Been putting it out every Monday, same as always. Can't help it if you can't keep your car on the road. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. She stormed toward the concrete can, gave it a furious kick, and yelped when her foot met solid stone. She stumbled back, wincing, nearly trickling out of their own heels. Neighbors began trickling out of their houses, drawn by the screech of metal and the sound of her yelling. Phones came out. Cameras clicked. The gossip grapevine was already recording. Mrs. Harper from across the street whispered loudly to her husband, "That's the third time this month she's hit his can." Guess it finally bit back. Karen spun in a circle, desperate for sympathy. "You all saw this. He set this up on purpose to damage my car. It's entrapment, contraband's for the police, Karen," I said smoothly. "What this is private property. My can's right where it should be. On my curb. On my land." Her face burned crimson. "I'll have the HOA deal with this stunt." I took another sip of coffee, savoring the taste of victory. "Funny, I sent the HO video proof of you running over my bins weeks ago. They didn't care. Guess now they'll have to." The crowd chuckled. Some of the neighbors actually clapped. The smug queen of citations and notices, the self-declared ruler of the HOA, was standing red-faced in front of a totaled Lexus and an unscathed trash can. The irony was too sweet. Karen pulled out her phone, barking into it about tow trucks and insurance, all while glaring daggers at me. She tried to spin it, yelling that I'd created a hazard, that I'd violated HO codes. But every time she turned back toward the bin, the sight of it standing tall, untouched, made her stumble over her own arguments. The tow truck eventually came, dragging her Lexus away like a wounded animal. She rode off in the cab, still shouting threats out the window. I stayed on my porch until the noise faded, then walked down to pat the concrete can like it was a faithful dog. That night, the neighborhood group chat lit up. Screenshots of the wreck, videos of the impact, endless jokes about the trash can that fought back. By morning, memes were floating around. Karen's Lexus smashed against the immovable can. Caption was standard C unbeatable. When the HOA board finally called me, their voices were tight and awkward. They tried to spin it, saying maybe I should consider replacing the can with a standard model to maintain uniformity. I laughed right into the tone. "Sure thing," I said, "as soon as Karen reimburses me for the 7 bins she flattened before this one." Silence. Then a clipped. "We'll discuss it at the next meeting." But the damage was done. Karen wasn't untouchable anymore. The board couldn't protect her from humiliation, and the neighbors who once tolerated her nitpicking now had the perfect story to whisper about at every barbecue and block party. She went from queen bee to neighborhood punchline overnight. And me. I finally had peace. Every Monday evening, I'd stroll down to the curb, look at my indestructible monument and smile. The trash got picked up, and no one dared touch my can again. Sometimes justice doesn't come from complaints or paperwork. Sometimes, it comes from a solid block of concrete, painted black, standing quietly at the edge of a driveway. And sometimes, the best way to deal with a bully is to let them crash headfirst into their own arrogance.